Sundays, 3 to 4 p.m. on Wells Radio 89.3 FM. Ibadan. Character matters. Building values. Shaping lives.
Amazing people, good afternoon and welcome back to The Nest. I am Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe, the lead counselor, and it is a profound privilege to step back behind this microphone to speak directly, intimately, and authoritatively into your lives today. I missed our connection last week, but today the studio is clear. The airwaves are ours, and it's just you and me. We're grateful to God for life, and always grateful to God for the privilege to be back, to be able to do this. You know, the last time it was just us in the studio, we looked trauma in the eye. We broke down how to handle it, how to respond, and how to stop the immediate bleeding of the mind. But at some point also we're saying to ourselves that survival cannot be our final destination. We cannot spend our entire lives merely managing pain, ducking from the headlines, or bracing ourselves against the next economic shock. We must move from defensive coping to offensive mental fortification. So today, we're taking a massive step forward and pulling out the clinical scalpel to deliver a complete 3-dimensional blueprint for your mind, your household. And our focus for this solo masterclass is guarding the gates, replenishing reserves, and cultivating post-traumatic growth in chaotic times. That's a mouthful, I guess, but just stay with me. I'm sure that we're going to have a great time together. Over the next hour, we're going to look at 3 things: how to actively filter what is allowed to access our mind, how to refuel our emotional accounts when the environment is completely draining your budget, your energy, and finally, how to ensure that the friction of our present society, does not break our children, does not break our relationships, but rather bakes them into giants of unshakable character. So wherever you're at, pull over your cars. If you're behind the wheels, turn up your volume in your kitchens. You're at home with family, gather together in the living room, grab your notebooks, and you're here for a time of great learning, relearning, and unlearning today. So this is Character Matters on Wells Radio 89.3 FM. It's your preferred wholesome family radio, Wells Radio. It's so good to be here. Thank you so much, our studio manager, Mr. Stephen. Thanks to the station manager, Mr. Emmanuel, and then, of course, to the CEO, Evangelist Lillian Bademosi. It's a pleasure to be here. So the nest is officially open. Let's fortify our souls. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Character Matters for Nation Building with your host, Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe on World Radio 89.3 FM. This conversation shapes lives. Welcome back to Character Matters for Nation Building.
All right, you're welcome back. It's still Wells Radio 89.3 FM, and this is Character Matters. I'm your host, Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe. Like I hinted earlier, today we're going to be taking a deep dive into some learnings, and I want you to pay attention. We're guarding the gates, we're replenishing the reserves, and we're cultivating post-traumatic growth in chaotic times. You know, the last time we had this kind of session, we're talking about trauma, the various kinds of trauma, and how to develop coping mechanisms, of course, positive coping mechanisms, because we know that there are times that people also, get themselves involved in some unhealthy and negative coping mechanisms when they're dealing with traumatic situations. So when you're looking at this topic, we want to break it down into three pillars. The very first pillar is guarding the gates. That's the shield. And I'm an advocate for this. I use this a lot, especially when I do trainings. And we need to look at our lives as treasures. Looking at our lives. When I say our lives now, I'm not just talking about the physical being. When you understand the tripartite nature of human being, or the tripartite nature of man, as it were. When I say man, I'm talking about male and female. So when you look at that tripartite nature, that we have spirit, we're spirit beings, we have souls, and then we live in the body, which is that body with which you have experience with the physical realm, and then you have gateways that have been put there by the Almighty for you to be able to relate with the external world. And one of the most significant gateways, we're talking about the eye gate, and not just the eye gate now, but we want to look at other gates and how to protect the gates. In our work, my work as a counselor, a lot of times you see people who've been through issues, and it's because in some regard they've left their gates unguarded. They've left their gates open. Some due to ignorance, some, as a result of selfish interests, some as a result of, some carelessness or personal proclivities. Some personal weaknesses that they didn't deal with as they should have dealt with them, and they become vulnerable to some people who take advantage of them. So let's start at the very beginning, the entry point. And when we talk about, chaotic times, we're not just talking about security, of course, that's in the front burner. Yesterday I saw a video, and I also want to use this opportunity. People who share such videos, you need to understand that these are human beings. These are people who have feelings. These are people who are from families who have relationships. We need to protect them from stigma. You don't show the faces of such persons. So these are people who were said to have been in captivity for several days and weeks and had just been released, were being taken for medical care. And these were people, being taken out of a vehicle, and then people were taking pictures of the faces of these people. And I read something pathetic on social media, and somebody was saying, oh, that the women, they can't even walk because they've been exposed to sexual abuse the times that were there, that they were in captivity. And then you're looking at, you have this feeling, and then this is somebody showing the video and showing the faces of such people. Please let us desist from such acts. It's not healthy, it's not helpful. You create unhealthy feeling for the people who are involved, the survivors. Oh, the God has kept them alive, they are survivors, and they're going to pick up the pieces of their lives again. But the things that have been shared and posted about them, a lot of times they can't do anything about those pictures, those images, and those videos. So I needed to quickly chip that in. It's not just about security. So chaos and the sudden, it can be the sudden drop in currency value, a hike in fuel price, unexpected policy, that change and affects business. Chaos, it can be the overwhelming influx of bad news on social media. A heartbreak, it could be a loss, it could be a disappointment, and the likes. So, but the mind, your mind is like a pristine, peaceful home. But the ears and the eyes are the front gates. They are the front gates through which access is gained into the mind, the heart, that place that is, naturally peaceful. But right now, because of the hyper focus on every single crisis, many people have left the front gates wide open, left the front gates unguarded. They've left the front gates, without security. Let me put it that way. Because something that is precious, that is a treasure to you, there is a way that you guard it jealously. So when you see your mind as a treasure and a place that you need to guard jealously, you need to be mindful about the care that you give to the front gates. Talking about the eyes, what we see, what we read with the eyes, and then the ears, what we listen to. And this can happen to us in various dimensions. So we're letting every headline, every panic-inducing, maybe WhatsApp broadcasts, in some regard, and every economic doom monger walk right into the parlor. You're allowing them sit on the sofa, and you're allowing them dictate the mood of the day. But there's a step-by-step strategy, an approach that I want us to look at as we consider this very first pillar. In some instances, it might be in relationship. And that's why we always talk about the red flag signs in relationships. So somebody in a relationship is already married, and they begin to talk about IPV, that's intimate partner violence, battering. And when we're talking about that, it's not just from the man to the woman. We have a lot of cases where it's also from the woman to the man. But however it is, or however it turns out, there are usually the red flag signs that are there during, that's pre-marital relationship, during courtship, that a lot of times people allow themselves to be blinded. And you hear people say things like, oh, love is blind. Yes, love is blind Now, in some regard, they say love is blind because you do not want to see the person's weakness. And, like we say, love is in the eye of the beholder. And, what is one man's meat is another man's poison and all of that. You want to stay blinded to their weaknesses. A lot of times also, as you stay blinded to such quote and unquote weaknesses, there are some important things that we need to pay attention to. So somebody who is already exhibiting forms of anger, this, just like I learned about a case, the man, this was a man to the woman, in the marital relationship, he never lifted his hand for once against the woman. But anytime he was angry, he could pick up objects and fling objects. He could pick up, maybe breakable items, hit them on the wall, hit them on the ground. This person was already showing that he had anger issues. But the young lady did not pay attention until they got married. So you're talking about opening the mind. The mind is a place that should be guarded jealously. You shouldn't just open your mind to anyone anyhow. You have your house, for instance, and somebody knocks on the door. You're not expecting a guest. The very first thing you want to ask is, you want to find out who is at the door. You want to find out who they are. You want to find out where they're coming from. You don't just go opening the door to them. But a lot of times we find people who just open the door of their hearts, and at the end of the day, people begin to talk about heartbreaks. A lot of times, I dare say that these are preventable. And we want to begin to focus on and emphasize the preventive dimension. Like we say, prevention is better than cure. So let's look at the step-by-step strategy for, other things that may be leading to trauma, that may aggravate issues that people deal with. So you want to talk about establishing an information currency audit. I call that information currency audit. Stop consuming chaos by accident. You need to be informed, yes. You have a right to be informed, yes. But you do not need to be inundated by all manner of news, report, or information. So choose one or two credible sources. I remember that I mentioned that briefly when I was talking about, how to overcome trauma, preventing some of the ways that we can prevent some of these things getting into our mind. Choose one or two credible sources for your updates. Check them at specific, scheduled times. You make up your mind that you're deliberately closing, shutting down. Social media, yes, is created for engagement. It's not created for wellness or well-being. So the more you scroll, the more you want to scroll. And you need to protect your mind, protect your heart. And one of the next thing that you need to do is to mute the propagators of panic. Anything that drives panic, there's a traffic for panic and it keeps bringing it your way. You need to be able to identify it and do an audit. You need to be able to do that audit because you have your life to live. Your wellness, your well-being is your responsibility. You are primarily responsible for your well-being. When we're now talking about minors, children, young adults, for whom we have to provide some oversight, we can help them from when they're young to be able to create such, kind of discipline for themselves where they are able to audit what comes in. They filter, you call that filter. So it's not any and everything that comes in. And this goes for relationships as well. Who are the you have a right to be able to choose the kind of friends that you want to have in your space. You have a right. Oh, yes, you can have people who are your acquaintances, who are colleagues at work, schoolmates, neighbors, but people that you grant access, who feed you with information. And there's the exchange. I always talk about, what happens when you talk about the different kinds of intercourse. So, conversational intercourse, you're talking about happening between, one or two one or two persons or more, and you're talking about what is being exchanged at every point in time, the essence that is being exchanged. So you have a responsibility to be able to check, to be able to filter what value you're giving and what value you're receiving at every point in time. So we all have that one WhatsApp group, online community, of friends who broadcast every financial panic, societal rumor. Sometimes I've been on some groups and you're wondering, people who are in diaspora, you'll be amazed that sometimes they are the first set of people who are sharing some news information. And you're wondering, these people getting all this information. And those of us who are even here, we haven't even heard these things. They know how to get the information. And a lot of times, rumors, they travel faster than the real news. They share pieces of, bad news without context. You have a responsibility to mute those notifications. And the same applies to your heart when it comes to your emotional well-being in relationships. Some persons find themselves in continuous abuse, verbal, psychological abuse, because they are constantly opening up the gate of their heart to people who do not value them. So these people constantly bring them down with words, words that do not add value to their lives, words that do not, talk about the essence of who they are. Words that bring them down always. Living around such people, you have a responsibility to mute those notifications, mute such, words from getting into you. So guarding your gate means choosing who has permission to speak into your subconscious. And I want to say this also applies in the spiritual realm. Some persons submit themselves to some kind of spiritual atmospheres that speak negativity into their lives. And some persons have taken over, have allowed fear to take over their lives just because some persons have spoken some negative words into their lives. These things are real. So who are you opening up your spirit to? Who are you opening up your mind to? Who are you opening up your environment to? All of these things eventually impact on your well-being. You have a responsibility to guard the gates. So guarding your gates, I'm saying that again, means choosing who has permission. You have a right to give permission. You have a right. Who is speaking the words into you? And sometimes when people say some of those words and you don't let them know that you are not comfortable. We also say this when we're talking about guarding our lives against abuse. And when you're speaking to the younger ones and even the young adults and older people, we've seen cases where, you go to the market and, some particular set of people, they want you to patronize them, but they're already going beyond boundaries and they're touching you inappropriately. And you just giggle, you just smile. So when you do that, you're already saying, oh, you are permitted. You can go ahead with what you're doing. I'm okay with what you're doing. People say words. You are not comfortable with those words, but because you sometimes people feel they don't want to lose some association, they don't want to lose friendships, and they allow such words, negative words, some kind of words that you can't even say, you can't even say them, over the air. You can't say such words. We have to be careful. Who are you granting access? Who are you granting permission to speak into your subconscious? Because the words that people speak to you, they have power. Like we say that the power of life and death lies in the tongue. So the words that people speak to your lives, and that's why we say to people, to parents, what kind of words are you saying to your children? What are you calling your children when you wake them up in the morning? Are you saying negative words or are you saying positive words? You're speaking words that will speak to their subconscious, speak to the worth, the essence of who they are. You're speaking to their mind, to the words that will stir them up onto good works. Words that are like salt, that heal. Words that make whole, that, heal the mind. Words that encourage and motivate. Who are you permitting to speak into your life? And even around you, some parents, you see, they allow people around them to speak negative words to their children, and then they just smile and just fold their hands because they don't want to offend. Oh, sometimes we've got to offend people. Oh, yes. How we started. Now we're going to the offensive. You are not waiting there and staying there and somebody is speaking negativity into the lives of your children and you're just staying mute. No. You have a right to refuse, to reject whatever has been said that doesn't align with your value, that does not align with your belief system. Number 3, you need to protect the twilight hours, late night hours. And one of the steps and one of the things that we encourage is to never look at chaotic news or financial trackers 60 minutes before bed or 30 minutes after waking up. When you're about to shut down, it's usually advisable that your phone, your gadgets, take them away from you. 1 hour at the minimum, ensure that you take the gadgets away from you and let your mind relax before you go to bed. Because your brain is transitioning into or out of sleep. So the time that you are in bed is the time. So before, it was a popular saying, to never put a TV set in the room. But now it's not just about the TV set. You have that right, at your fingertips with the phone set. So ensure that you guard your heart and your mind. And that period of time, I need to emphasize this, when your brain is transitioning into or out of sleep, it is highly suggestible. If you feed it panic first thing in the morning, you frame your entire day around anxiety. You become anxious, you become unsettled, you become restless. And it begins to affect your outlook and your disposition to your day and the things that you have to, get done. So in the layman, let's just look at, an analogy in the layman's way. If a stranger tries to dump a basket of stinking garbage right in the middle of your clean shop, just the person is bringing the garbage and you're seeing, would you remain there? Would you stand and fold your arms and allow the person walk through the door? No, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. Then why then do we open our phones every morning and let the world dump economic trash, mental garbage in our minds? Why do you allow people just walk into your heart? People that you do not know. You have not, taken time to understand this person. You have not taken time to understand their values. And the next thing, it's amazing that young people, not only young people, people go into relationships, romantic relationships. You have not even known that person. You have not even studied who they are. You have not known their values. And the next thing, romantic relationship, develops. And once romantic relationship develops, it beclouds a person's sense of reasoning and judgment. And that's why you find a lot of people say to this, once romance is involved, once sexual relation starts, it becomes difficult to be able to, to stay apart from that person. It beclouds the sense of reasoning and the sense of judgment. So remember, you're guarding the gates. You have a responsibility to do that. through the things that you grant access. Remember, we use the word permission. So permission is that I am giving authority for this information. I'm giving authority for this relationship. I'm giving authority for this, mindset. That which you do not want, you do not grant permission. You do not grant authority. Pillar number 2 that I want us to consider today. Many times, we've talked about trauma. We've talked about people who deal with issues. And when they deal with those issues, they are not dealing with the issues alone, of course, because they are not just by themselves. They are from families, they have friends, they have colleagues, they have neighbors. So many times when things are happening to people, there are other people who partake of the impact of whatever it is that they're going through. So we want to begin to look at how to replenish the reserves. How to replenish the reserves. So we're talking about ourselves as caretakers or caregivers. Caretakers, caregivers. So I want to speak to people who have responsibility to guard other people, to help them protect their mind, help them protect what happens to them. Talking about parents, talking about school owners, talking about professionals who are constantly giving, who are constantly solving problems, yes, who are holding space, comforting others. But as a counselor, I must say to you and ask you, it's more of a question that we need to ask. Who is pouring back into you? And what are you pouring back into yourself? So many times you have people in such conditions and situations who are always giving, who are always nurturing, who are always taking care of other people. What steps are you taking to ensure that you are pouring back into yourself? Because you can't pour from an empty cup and you can't give what you don't have. So if the value that you're constantly giving gets depleted and it's not being refilled, it gets to some point. Now you need to understand, you get to some point where you become, quote and unquote, useless because you no longer are giving the right value that you should give. I want to quickly digress to the issue of secondary trauma, like I said, which is also known as secondary traumatic stress or, vicarious trauma. There is emotional distress that a person experiences when indirectly exposed to someone else's trauma. The last time we talked about trauma, we're talking about people, this which is common around us, the issue of insecurity, kidnapping and all of that. There are people who've been kidnapped who have families, who have parents, who have friends, who are waiting anxiously to have them back into, their homes and all of that. So because they are anxious, they are also at the point where they are always thinking about what is happening to these people in captivity. They go through, even though they are not the ones directly sustaining or receiving the impact of whatever is being done, but it affects them. So it commonly affects maybe healthcare providers, first responders, therapists, who regularly engage with trauma survivors. But it can also happen to anyone hearing vivid, distressing stories. And I remember that I made mention of that. And sometimes some of these, the pieces of news information that we get, the videos that we watch, the images that we see, those can cause secondary trauma, in people. So it's very important. Many people are operating with a severely overdrawn emotional bank account, overdrawn. They're always pouring, they're always giving. And I want to say, I'm sure we're still going to have time very soon on one of the episodes where we'll be relating this directly to relationships. And sometimes you have relationships where it's one person who is always giving, one person who is showing love. I had an experience with someone who shared some time ago And this person, she's the one who's always giving him, who's always giving him calls, who's always checking on him, who's always asking after his well-being. He never does. That's already a red flag. That's already saying something, that this person is getting affection and attention from somewhere else. But a person, if that lady is not careful, the lady becomes a dumb ground. So all the care, all the attention, this person is just being used, like a plan B. If this other one doesn't work, I have someone to fall back to. We need to be very conscious of these things. We need to be very careful in relationships, some in friendships. And you see, one person is always giving, maybe in marriage. One person is always the one who is giving, who is providing, who is nurturing, who is, giving the financial support and all of that. The other person is always just taking. We need to watch out. And particularly for those in marriage, if you are not yet married, shine your eye. You are not yet married, look out for these signs. And some persons will say, oh, no, it's just like that. When we get married, it's going to change. I know it's not going to be like this forever. No. Many times, I say to you, a larger percentage of the times, the way that a person is, they do not usually change when they get married. They're already saying to you that this is who they are. In friendship, and you observe that, you see that this is happening, you have a responsibility to let go. You have a responsibility. See, many times, many people find it difficult to say no. They find it difficult to be able to say, I can't do this. I can't take this. That, word, N-O, is one word that many people need to learn to say. Many people take on more than they can bear, responsibilities. And there's also the fact, maybe in workplace experience, like you say, people want to walk the willing horse to death. Oh, this person is so committed. This person is so dedicated. If you ask them to do this, they go, overboard and, do beyond and just want to deliver. And before you know it, they're calling, is every time, Mr. Lagbaja, because yes, they deliver, but Mr. Lagbaja must also learn to be able to say no in a polite way. Oh, I'm sorry, I would have loved to be able to do this, but at this time, I'm not able to. I'll let you know when I'll be available to be able to deliver on this. You must learn to do it, to say no politely. You must learn to say no politely, because you're giving, but you are not taking back. You are not, being replenished. It's important. It's important. So we say that, like I said, that many people are operating with a severely overdrawn emotional bank account. So when the internal reserves are hitting zero, you cannot think creatively. It begins to impact on the person's productivity. It begins to impact on their well-being. But some persons, because they want to please everybody, and I want to say, you can't please everybody. It's not possible. You can't please everybody. Some persons they seem stuck in that, circumstance where they feel that they just want to please people. They just want to do things for people. Some do it so that they can curry favor. You do not need to do that. Some do it so that they can remain quote unquote in people's good books of some persons. No. There's some point in time in life where you must be able to say, oh, I need to take a break. Oh, I'm sorry, I may not be able to go on with this. You must learn to be able to say no. So if you are operating with a severely overdrawn emotional bank account, you need to take a break. You need to pause. You need to tell yourself, I am taking on too much. I need to take a break. I need to take a rest. And when people go through emotional stress that is leading to trauma, you need to understand some of the things that begins to happen to them. I've talked about the fact that you cannot, when this impacts on people, when the internal reserves are already hitting zero, Patients, you find out that they start to show frustration, okay? And that's why you begin to see people transfer their aggression and frustration on people who are close to them because of what they're dealing with. The patience with children, patience with people around them starts to drop. Ability to spot business opportunities starts to freeze. And you cannot give what you do not have. I will be taking us through 5 stages of trauma, but we will do that when we come back from a short break, and also be opening the phone lines soon to see if we have anybody who wants to call in, ask a question, or make a comment. We'll be right back. It's still Character Matters. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Character Matters for Nation Building with your host, Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe on World Radio 89.3 FM. This conversation shapes lives. Welcome back to Character Matters for Nation Building.
Okay, you're welcome back. It's still Character Matters on Wells Radio 89.3 FM. In case you're listening and you want to call in, 0916-893-1000. That's 000. Then 0915-333-4893. You can call either of those 2 numbers for now. So the stages of trauma that people may be dealing with, because today what we're looking at how to help people. A lot of people are going through agonizing, experiences, traumatic experiences, and we're around them and wondering how to be able to help them. You need to understand that sometimes, a lot of times actually, the very first stage, people who are dealing with circumstances, that's agonizing, first thing they do, denial. That very first stage is where you do not believe that what has happened. You're still trying to wrap your head around it. You can't imagine that it has happened. That's the very first stage. Second stage, the person gets to a point of anger. They are angry. People get angry. They get angry with themselves if they feel that they were responsible. Oh, maybe the feeling, I read a story, of an accident that happened, was a child, and, eventually that child passed, and the mother, there was like some kind of premonition before that child went out, that day the child, was just reluctant, didn't want to go to school, but he was forced to go to school. And the mother felt angry. She was angry with herself that she couldn't, see what the child was saying at the time. So that level, when a person moves past the first stage of trauma, so the realities of the terrifying experience can start to hit home. That leads to that second stage of trauma, which is anger. Some people get angry with God. Oh, begin to ask why. Oh, people of faith and say, oh, but I pray, but we have done this. Oh, but we've done that. But we have been faithful. But we've been and then this has happened. These things are real, but people can be helped through these stages. The third stage would be the stage of bargaining. The fourth stage for some persons would be depression, and they're unable. An experience of a mother who lost, the first child, promising young man, and she did not recover. She went into depression and eventually passed. These things are real. But how we help such people go through the process, experiences of people who have been through disappointments, who've been through losses, maybe loss of a child or loss of property. We heard recently of people whose shops were burnt. Those are losses, deep losses. The people who go through such, pain, or somebody who's lost a loved one, lost a partner, irrespective of how old they may be, loss is still loss. And we need to be able to understand that people go through this. Eventually, some get to the stage of acceptance where they accept that, this is what has happened. But whilst they're going through these things, there are things we shouldn't say to people who are dealing with circumstances, whether or not you have been through such situation or circumstance. No two situations are the same. And some persons want to begin to talk to other people because, they've been able to go through some situations, with maybe little or no support, and then they feel every other person should be able to go through. And they say things like, you'll get over it. No, that's a no. You don't say that. You will get over it. Encourage them. Allow them to express their feelings. Take note of what they're saying. Help them deal with the situation that they're going through at the time that they're going through the situation. And some persons, you're just a bit shocked. That's all. And no, you never, don't ever, belittle or bring down, water down the gravity or severity of what a person is dealing with. Never. Irrespective of whether you've been through, quote and unquote, worst situations, because that's what happens sometimes. Other people have been through worst situations. No, you do not have a right to say that to people. And some persons say, well, I'm not an expert, but I think if you're not an expert, then please keep quiet. You are not an expert. You are not an expert. Refer. You can refer that person for counseling, refer that person for some psychosocial support, refer the person for maybe prayers or, refer. So what you do not know, you do not know. What you are not an expert in, you are not an expert in it. And then some people say, maybe you need to do more and complain less. No, you don't. And at the point that people are dealing with issues, please allow them to express themselves. Don't shut them down. Some persons even want to cry. They want to weep. They say, no, don't cry. No, please, allow them. And so some persons will say, it's not that bad. No, that's not a good thing to say. Some persons will say things like, others have had it worse. No, we do not say that. And no comparing situations. And some persons will say things like, don't make a big fuss about that. No, we do not say such things to people who are dealing with trauma. Some persons may say, I have a friend who's been through similar situation and he got over it. So, yes, that person got over it. But no two people are the same. No two situations are the same. You can only encourage them. So these are some of the things that you don't say to people. Sometimes we will say, but this has happened a long time ago now. You should have gotten over this thing. It has happened a long time ago. Do you know that there are some people who never healed from, maybe childhood trauma? They never healed from it because they never had an opportunity to talk about things like that, the things that happened to them. And that's why I even say to people who lose maybe a parent, and the children are there. Many times people are focusing on the adults or focusing on the man or the woman, and nobody is talking to the children. And you see a lot of children grow up with such, traumatic, unhealed trauma. And they carry it into their relationships, carry it into marriage. Please, let's remember that these things are not things that we say. And, looking at the steps and practices that we can go into, engage in, micro restorative practices. We say that rest is not a luxury that you enjoy only when you travel. Rest must be practiced daily. Learn to understand what your own rest pattern is. Some persons 5 minutes, 10 minutes, quick naps, and they are fine. We must be intentional about it. deep breathing, silence in the middle of a hectic day, sitting quietly in the car before you step down from the car and go into the house. You want to relax so that you don't carry the baggage of what you've experienced at work and go and transfer it to the people at home. You need to build an emotional safety net. Build an emotional safety net. That's, you need to find one or max relationship, maybe a counselor, professional counselor, trusted. We're here for you at Nurture Nest. You can reach out on 0805 635 4859. Find out who you can speak with. Taking the break, taking the pause. It's just like you have a vehicle. No matter how good or the engine is, or the car or the vehicle is, if you do not stop at some point to buy fuel, whatever happens, at some point that vehicle will stop moving. So you need to refuel. You need to have rest, take a break, pause at times. So you must stop, park, and refuel your emotional well. Okay? And like we say, this is Wells Radio. Sometimes listening to wholesome content helps your mind. So as we begin to wrap it up today, we want to look at number 3 pillar, which is cultivating post-traumatic growth. Like we've said, what post-traumatic, stress disorder is all about. What happens when the person has been through, an experience that is agonizing, that is traumatizing, but we do not remain there. This is actually where we're taking control of our story. You're taking control of your experience, of your pain. You're taking control of the mess so that you can turn it into a message. Taking, control of what you've been through and making it a story, for some other persons to learn from. I know a woman who had a child when she was a teenager. Now she has an outreach to young girls using her story. And incidentally, and quite fortunately for her as well, the child is grown now, goes with her, on this advocacy and campaign, talking about what happened to her and telling, those who are up and coming to avoid the pitfalls. Those are things that come. So we take control. We have profound, life-altering concepts. It is called the post-traumatic growth. I want you to take note of that. So we're familiar, like I said, with the PTSD, crisis breaks a person's spirit, but the PTG is the exact opposite. So here is scientifically proven reality that human beings can go through a severe trial, be it financial loss, career disruption, societal instability, disappointments, heartbreaks, and they can come out of it, the other side, they can come out of it stronger. Wiser, more innovative, more focused on core values. And you find out that these experiences, whatever they turn out to be for people, will be determined by how these persons and individuals have been raised, the exposures they've had, the learnings, the trainings that they've had. So it's important that we are giving the right trainings, giving the right exposures. We're talking about building what you call the adversity quotient. The people can, go through situations and come out stronger, looking at the bright side of life. You can come out better. You can come out, more focused than they were before the storm started. So we cannot control. There's something. So you need to understand things you do not have control over. I don't have control over this. I can't control the macro policies of the nation. You can't control the global market trends. But you can absolutely decide how this friction shapes our character and the destiny of our household. So shift from the why me to what now, what next. This has happened. What can I do? How can I make the most out of this situation? So when you're surrounded by economic or social pressure, Survival mindset will ask, why is everything so hard? That's the survival mindset. But the growth mindset pivots and will ask, given this current reality, what new skills can I learn? So model deliberate grit for the next generation. We need to deepen meaningful connections. Don't stay at the survival mode. Don't stay at the survival mode. So think of raw gold. It looks like a common dirty rock when it is first pulled from the earth. It is only when it passes through the intense heat of the furnace that the impurities melt away, leaving behind pure, priceless, unshakable gold. The chaotic season is a kind of furnace, whatever it is, but we're not going to let it burn us down. We are going to let it refine us into pure character. Don't stay at the survival mode where you are asking, why has this happened? Why is it me? But you're going into the growth mode. What can I make out of this? What lessons can I learn about this situation? Okay? As we close the nest today, I want to leave you with this final charge, that your mind is a sanctuary. It's not a public highway. It's not a public highway. It's not a public highway. So you have the absolute authority to guard the gates of your mind from chaos, the responsibility to replenish it, its reserves, when you are running on empty, the responsibility and the power to turn every environmental pressure into a catalyst for your personal growth it lies in your hands. It lies in my hands. So don't let the chaotic world dictate the architecture of your character, that you begin, some just go into, that mode where everything falls apart. They want to revenge. They want to just, lose everything, lose their mind, No, you do not have to go into that survival mode. You can go into growth mode where you take responsibility for all that happens. And then with your experience, you're able to impact other lives into the growth mode. It's been an amazing time today on Character Matters. And I'm still your host, Oluwatoyin Ogedengbe. I look forward to seeing you again next week by the grace of God. Thank you and bye for now.